Welcome to Warfare Codex. If you enjoy fascinating and unusual history, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more incredible stories. Now, let's dive into the strange and extraordinary world of history's most unique individuals. 1. Wild Bill Hickok, 1837-1876. James Butler. Wild Bill Hickok was one of the most legendary figures of the Wild West, known for his sharpshooting skills and larger-than-life personality. Born in Illinois, Hickok started his career as a scout, lawman, and gambler, but his reputation as a gunslinger came from his deadly encounters. One of his most famous gunfights occurred in 1865 when he dueled and killed David McCandless, an event that helped cement his status as a feared marksman. However, it was the 1867 shootout in Springfield, Missouri that truly made him famous. In a classic quick-draw duel, he gunned down Davis Tutt over a gambling dispute, marking one of the first recorded showdowns of the Wild West. Hickok later became a U.S. Marshal, enforcing the law in rough frontier towns like Abilene, Kansas. However, his fondness for gambling ultimately led to his downfall. In 1876, while playing poker in Deadwood, South Dakota, he was shot in the back of the head by Jack McCall. The cards he held, two pairs of black aces and eights, became known as the Dead Man's Hand. 2. Jesse James, 1847-1882. Jesse James wasn't just a gunslinger. He was an outlaw, a bank robber, and a folk hero. Raised in Missouri during the violent years of the Civil War, James and his brother Frank joined Confederate guerrilla groups, learning ambush tactics and hit-and-run warfare. After the war, Jesse turned to crime, forming the infamous James Younger Gang. Armed with revolvers and rifles, they carried out daring bank and train robberies, often escaping in dramatic fashion. James was particularly known for his skill with a Colt revolver, which he used in several deadly shootouts. Despite his criminal lifestyle, Jesse James became a symbol of rebellion, portrayed as a Robin Hood-like figure, though there's little evidence he shared his wealth with the poor. In the end, his life of violence caught up with him. In 1882, he was shot in the back of the head by Robert Ford, a member of his own gang, seeking a government reward. 3. Billy the Kid, 1859-1881. Few names evoke the Wild West quite like Billy the Kid. Born Henry McCarty, he was a teenage outlaw who became one of history's most famous gunfighters. His quick reflexes and deadly aim earned him a reputation far beyond his short life. Billy gained notoriety during the Lincoln County War in New Mexico, fighting against rival factions of ranchers and lawmen. He was said to have killed at least 21 men, though historians believe the real number was closer to 8 or 9. His most famous gunfight was the ambush and killing of Sheriff William Brady, a move that sealed his fate as an outlaw. Captured and sentenced to hang in 1881, Billy the Kid escaped from jail, killing 2 guards in the process. However, just months later, Sheriff Pat Garrett tracked him down and shot him in Fort Sumner, ending the legend at just 21 years old. 4. Wyatt Earp, 1848-1920. Unlike many gunslingers of the West, Wyatt Earp wasn't an outlaw. He was a lawman, gambler, and frontiersman who lived a long and eventful life. Earp is best known for his role in the gunfight at the OK Corral, one of the most famous shootouts in Western history. Earp and his brothers, along with Doc Holliday, faced off against the Clanton-McClory gang in Tombstone, Arizona in 1881. In just 30 seconds, Wyatt and his allies killed 3 men, solidifying his reputation as a fearless gunfighter. However, Earp's legend didn't stop there. After the OK Corral, he led a personal vendetta ride against those who had ambushed his brother, taking the law into his own hands. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Wyatt Earp lived long enough to see himself become a legend, eventually consulting on early Hollywood Western films before dying peacefully in 1929. 5. Doc Holliday, 1851-1887. John Henry. Doc Holliday was a dentist by trade, but his name became legendary for an entirely different reason: his deadly skill with a six-shooter. Born in Georgia, Holliday moved west after being diagnosed with tuberculosis, hoping the dry climate would prolong his life. Instead, he found a new calling as a gambler and gunfighter. Doc was a close friend of Wyatt Earp and played a crucial role in the gunfight at the OK Corral. Armed with a nickel-plated revolver and a shotgun, Holliday was known for his speed and precision. He was feared for his quick temper and had no hesitation in pulling the trigger, a fact that earned him a fierce reputation. Despite his many gunfights, tuberculosis was his real killer. He spent his final years sick and weak, dying at the age of 36 in a Colorado sanitarium. His last words were reportedly, "This is funny," perhaps amused by the fact that he hadn't died in a gunfight. 6. Frank James, 1844-1915. Frank James, the older brother of Jesse James, was a notorious figure of the Wild West, though he often worked in the shadows of his more famous younger sibling. Frank fought in the Confederate Army during the Civil War before joining Jesse in a life of crime. Alongside his brother, Frank was a member of the James Younger gang, participating in numerous bank and train robberies. However, unlike Jesse, Frank was known to be more cautious and avoided many of the violent confrontations that made his brother famous. Frank's gunslinging skills were highly respected, but he was more focused on strategic robberies rather than dramatic shootouts. After Jesse's death, Frank was arrested and put on trial for his involvement in the gang's crimes. He was acquitted after a lengthy trial and later lived a relatively quiet life, working in various jobs until his death in 1915. 7. Tom Horn, 1860-1903. Tom Horn was an infamous scout, detective, and hired gun who became one of the most feared figures of the late 19th century. Born in Missouri, Horn worked for the U.S. Cavalry and later as a scout for ranchers, where he developed a reputation as a ruthless enforcer. Horn was known for his work as a range detective hired to deal with cattle rustlers and other lawbreakers. His methods were brutal and often involved ambushes, shootings, and sometimes even executions. His most notorious act was the murder of a young boy named Willie Nickel in 1901, an act that ultimately led to his conviction and hanging. Horn was believed to have killed over 20 men during his time as a gunman, although the exact number remains unclear. His death sentence was controversial, and many believed that he was wrongfully convicted, but his violent reputation endured. 8. Clay Allison, 1840-1887. Clay Allison was a legendary gunslinger who became known for his wild temperament and willingness to engage in violent confrontations. Born in Tennessee, Allison fought in the Civil War before moving west to Texas, where he earned a reputation as both a cattle driver and a fierce gunfighter. What set Clay Allison apart from many other gunslingers was his unpredictability. He was known for being quick to anger, and once he drew his revolver, there was no telling what might happen. He was involved in several violent confrontations, and some stories claim that he would shoot at anything that moved. Allison was involved in numerous murders and gunfights, but was never formally tried for them. Later in life, his behavior became less erratic, and he died in a more peaceful manner in 1887, after falling from his horse and breaking his neck. His death was as violent and unexpected as his life. 9. Billy Claiborne, 1851-1882. Billy Claiborne was a lesser-known, yet highly significant figure in the turbulent days of the American frontier. Initially a rancher and miner, Claiborne became embroiled in the infamous gunfight at the OK Corral, where he found himself facing off against Wyatt Earp, Doc Holliday, and others. Though not as skilled a gunfighter as some of his contemporaries, Claiborne's involvement in the notorious event at Tombstone led to his name being immortalized in Wild West lore. He was known for his quick temper, and it's believed that he had a personal vendetta against the Earp brothers and Holliday. Claiborne's life was short and filled with violence. After the OK Corral, he continued to struggle with criminal activity and was eventually killed in 1882 in a confrontation with the law. His death at the hands of lawmen further cemented his place in Wild West history as a tragic, lesser-known figure. 10. Ben Thompson, 1843-1884. Ben Thompson was a legendary figure whose career as a lawman, gambler, and gunslinger spanned across multiple states in the Wild West. Born in Kentucky, Thompson was initially involved in law enforcement and was known for his skill with a gun. He worked as a lawman in places like Austin, Texas, before becoming a hired gun for various businessmen. What made Thompson stand out was his ability to maintain a reputation as both a lawman and an outlaw. He participated in several violent confrontations, including a notorious gunfight in 1884 that saw him kill another man in a Texas saloon. Thompson had numerous confrontations throughout his career, but his death in 1884 was dramatic and sudden. He was shot by a man named Jack Harris in a Texas saloon. Thompson's career made him a well-known figure across the frontier, and he was often considered one of the most feared men in the West. However, his death in 1884 marked the end of a storied and violent life. 11. Pat Garrett, 1850-1908. Pat Garrett is one of the most iconic lawmen of the Wild West, primarily known for his role in tracking down and killing Billy the Kid. Born in Alabama, Garrett worked as a lawman, buffalo hunter, and rancher before becoming famous as the sheriff of Lincoln County, New Mexico. Garrett's reputation as a sharpshooter and tough lawman earned him the task of capturing Billy the Kid, one of the most notorious outlaws of the time. After a series of manhunts, Garrett finally cornered Billy the Kid in 1881, shooting him dead in Fort Sumner. This act secured Garrett's place in history as one of the West's most famous lawmen. However, despite his success in capturing Billy the Kid, Garrett's life was not without controversy. He later became involved in several shady business deals and, in 1908, was found dead from gunshot wounds under mysterious circumstances, possibly the victim of a dispute over land. 12. John Wesley Hardin, 1853-1895. John Wesley Hardin was one of the most notorious outlaws and gunfighters in the history of the Wild West. Known for his violent temper and numerous killings, Hardin's life was marked by chaos and conflict. Born in Texas, Hardin was involved in his first killing at the age of 15 and went on to kill at least 20 men throughout his life. Hardin gained a reputation for being a quick-drawing and deadly marksman, but his violent actions often led to clashes with lawmen and rival gangs. He spent time in prison for murder, only to return to his violent ways after his release. His most famous altercation occurred in 1878, when he killed a man named Charles Webb in a saloon in El Paso, a crime for which he was eventually pardoned. Despite his violent past, Hardin sought to settle down and even became a lawyer later in life. However, in 1895, Hardin was shot and killed in a saloon by a man named John Selman, ending his violent and infamous career. 13. The Sundance Kid, 1867-1908. Harry Altham Longabaugh better known as the Sundance Kid, was an infamous outlaw and member of Butch Cassidy's Wild Bunch gang. While not as well known for his gunfighting skills as others on this list, the Sundance Kid was a key figure in the gang's numerous robberies and escapes from the law. The Sundance Kid gained his nickname from his time spent in Sundance, Wyoming, and was notorious for his calm demeanor and deadly accuracy with a rifle. He participated in several high-profile robberies with Butch Cassidy, including train and bank heists. After a series of robberies, the Wild Bunch fled to South America to avoid capture. While their exact fates remain unclear, it is believed that the Sundance Kid and Butch Cassidy were cornered by Bolivian authorities in 1908 and killed in a final shootout. Despite the ambiguity surrounding his death, the Sundance Kid remains a legendary figure in the history of the American West. Chapter 14. Zorro. Unknown, mid-1800s. Although not a traditional gunslinger in the sense of the others on this list, Zorro deserves mention due to his legendary status as a masked avenger in California during the early 1800s. Zorro, whose true identity was Don Diego de la Vega, was a skilled swordsman and marksman who fought against corruption and injustice, particularly against oppressive Mexican officials. Zorro's fame spread throughout California, and he became a symbol of resistance against tyranny. Armed with a rapier and a pistol, he would often challenge the corrupt officials and Spanish soldiers who exploited the common people. His signature move was to leave a Z carved into his enemy's property or clothing, signaling his triumph over them. Although his existence is often debated, Zorro's influence on Wild West legends and pop culture remains undeniable, inspiring numerous books, films, and TV series about his heroic exploits. 15. Bill Doolin, 1858-1896. Bill Doolin was a notorious outlaw and leader of the Doolin-Dalton gang, which terrorized the Indian Territory, modern-day Oklahoma, in the late 1800s. Doolin's criminal career began with small-time crimes, but he eventually joined a gang of outlaws who specialized in bank robberies and train holdups. Known for his calm demeanor and sharp shooting, Doolin was considered one of the more intelligent criminals of his time. His gang was notorious for eluding law enforcement, with Doolin himself being one of the most wanted men in the territory. Despite his many escapes, Doolin's luck eventually ran out. In 1896, after a shootout with U.S. Marshals, Bill Doolin was killed. His death marked the end of a significant chapter in Wild West crime, and his gang disbanded soon afterward. Doolin remains one of the lesser-known yet important figures in the history of Wild West outlaws. Thanks for watching Warfare Codex. If you enjoyed this journey into history's strangest figures, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more amazing stories. See you in the next one.